of moving to the impeachment and removal of this president right now. So let me give you, Kevin was giving you his version of why I'm doing this. Let me just give you my version. First of all, there is the objective fact that Donald Trump is a cancer at the heart of America. And so there is an actual reason to do this for all of us together, which is to step up to the biggest crisis in America in a generation. But let me say that I view myself, Kevin was describing me, I view myself as one of the luckiest people in the world. I mean, my luck began by being born in America. What a great piece of fortune that is. I'm really lucky that I had parents who I took completely for granted, but who took care of me and made sure that I never asked, am I getting a hot dinner? I might argue with my mother about whether it was a good dinner to show what a little snot I was, but I knew I was getting a hot dinner. I knew who I was going to eat it with. I knew where I was going to put my head down at night. In fact, I never even questioned it. And it wasn't really until I was an adult that I realized that there are a lot of kids who don't have that privilege. That there are kids who don't know where their head is going to be laid down that night, or whether there's going to be a hot meal, or if they're going to, that they don't get to have that dinner with their parents and complain to their mom about tuna glop one more time. But I did. And so when I think about being here, I have 4 kids. I look at them, I think about what I want to hand on to them and what I want to represent to them. And I want to make sure that they see that I'm living a certain way, that I have real values. People love to describe me in terms of money. I don't see myself in terms of money. I don't want them to see me in terms of money. I want them to think about me for what I care about and what I'm willing to do for what I care about. Kevin is right. When we started this 15 months ago, it really took off like a rocket because there were people all over America who knew there was something desperately wrong. That we were accustomed, or at least, to thinking that bad people could do bad things to America. And those were people who were not Americans. It never struck most people growing up in this country that the biggest threat to this country would be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But it is. And so people responded really fast. But it isn't just that over 7 million people have signed up. If you look back to 2018, we tried to make sure that the people who were part of Need to Impeach participated in a really granular and important way in the elections in November of last year. So we had 3.5 million direct actions by people on the list. We had 80,000 volunteers. We spent a lot of time, and I know a lot of the people in this room participated in that, but people on the list wrote 1.6 million handwritten notes to people in swing districts. And to put that in context, the biggest handwritten note program in American political history was Howard Dean in 2004, and they wrote 30,000 handwritten notes. We wrote 1.6 million handwritten notes. And if you look, we focused on 43 races, 43 House races. We won 36 out of 43. Wow. That is an 84% win rate, and our supporters, and I'll do the math for you in a second, were clearly the difference in 16 House races and 3 governorships around the country.
Whoa.
So for instance, if you go to Utah, there was a race in Salt Lake City between Ben McAdams and Mia Love. I don't know if you guys watched it on the news. The margin was 873 votes.
Whoa.
We had 12,000 supporters in that district. In previous midterms, approximately 4,000 of them voted. In this race, 9,000 voted.
Wow.
So if you do the math, That's 6 times the margin of victory is the difference.
Wow.
And that's what we're talking. That's true in 16 House races and 3 governorships around the country. So when you think about what happened in 2018, we took a pause in terms of impeachment for a couple of months because we said, we can't move forward unless we retake the House. And by the way, how's that working out? I mean, we said in 2018, if we don't retake the House, we're in desperate trouble. That's got to be the first step to moving towards a just and fair America. But the second step is removing this corrupt and dangerous president. And let me say this. The people in this room, this is the start. Today is the start of the second step in need to impeach as well. Because what we've been saying about need to impeach, we grew this list. We said this is the largest active political list in America, which it is. We're much bigger than the NRA. We're at 7 million people. It's over 7.1, but we want to be at least at 10. We've been adding about 20,000 people a day. You can do the math in terms of time. But it's not just a question of names on a list, and that's why you guys are so important. You guys are the tip of the spear. Because being on a list can mean something, and it can mean something completely different as well, depending on how engaged you are, what you're willing to do, and how much you care. And that's the second step of what we're trying to do. Because for us to succeed at this point, we can't just be an online petition. We have to take this to the districts around the United States of America on the ground. Because if we can do that, then not only can we win, but we can make a point about what's going on in America today. Everybody talks about Americans coming together. We need to transcend our division. We need to stand for traditional American values. We need to speak for everybody. I mean, that really, trust me, I speak to reporters fairly frequently, and they're always mouthing those words. That's what we're doing. We actually need to not only deepen the engagement of the people on the list, which you guys are the absolute center and focal point of, we also need to broaden that list across America, across every single division that people put up, including partisanship. And if we can do that, if we can go back to the districts and organize across every division in America, we will be making a statement about what Americans can do. That we have the ability in a crisis, and this president is the crisis. Yes. To come together and do what Americans traditionally do, which is to solve the biggest problems in the world. To put aside differences, however you define those. To put them aside and to step up for our deepest values and to show who we are. And if we can do that one time together, then we can do it again. And then we're back to being the people who do in fact solve the biggest problems by digging down when the times are tough. So that's why we're here. We're here to get organized. We're here to do a training to make sure that everybody in this room is as effective as possible when you go home. That you have all the tools that you need to make the difference you want to make. And we're also here for the people who come and stand here to listen to what you guys have to say, to hear how you're seeing this problem, and to make sure that we're doing it together. This isn't going to work. I mean, it's very clear. This is not going to work as something about anybody, including especially me. This is going to work if a bunch of people pull together and put their effort in together and prove that we can do it and stretch that out. That is exactly what we're trying to do. And so I know that if you, we're in Washington, D.C., the home of partisanship. This is an incredibly divided town, and the people who I talk to here are cynical about the idea of patriotism. They don't want to believe that there are Americans out there who really want to put the country first over everything, over their party, over their own personal short-term interests, that people will work really hard to save America in and of itself, but that's actually where we are. If this isn't about patriotism, if this is a purely partisan political act to try and remove a Republican president, it definitely won't work. This can only work if people around the country genuinely believe that this country will be better, that we will stand for traditional, commonly held American values that people feel all over the country on both sides of the aisle. So that's actually what we're trying to do. And when people tell us to shut up, and I promise, I have had so many people over the last 2 days in Washington, D.C. explain to me why I should just shut up. I ask two questions. The first question is, am I telling the truth?
Yeah.
Look, it's funny. I view the argument on this as being over. I know we're going to have a bunch of legal scholars and constitutional scholars get up here, and they're going to explain to you all the ins and outs of impeachment and the criteria to be impeached and what it takes, and they're going to give you a lay-down case that this president is bad. But that really is beside the point as far as I'm concerned. We've won that argument. The Republicans, Giuliani does not say the president didn't break the law. He doesn't. There's no one out there. He clearly directed people to break the law on multiple occasions, and those people are going to jail for the things he directed them to do. I mean, there is no other side to this story. But what I like to say is, we won the argument.
Yes.
Now we have to win the fight.
Yes.
It's like, okay, fine, our debating team got an A, but in the schoolyard, we're still getting our ass kicked. And that's what we're doing here. We're here to win the fight.
Yes.
We're here to go back to the districts and win the fight with the people of America,
yes,
so that together we can come back to Washington and insist that this president be impeached and removed.
Yes.
And look, the other thing that I've heard so much in the last 2 days is, why are you even doing this? Look, we can wait until November of 2020.
Yeah.
We'll vote them out. What is the big deal? What you're doing is such a pain in the ass. And let me say this. There's two assumptions in there that are completely false. One is, there's no cost to having Trump as president for 2 more years.
Oh.
And obviously, we just went through a government shutdown that was entirely on him.
Right.
That was a huge cost for America. And they assume that that will never happen again. Okay, now we'll go back to a normal president. We're never going back to a normal president. That is off the table. But the other assumption in that argument is, and this is what people are always assuming, they're assuming nothing will change. They're assuming he won't do anything bad.
Right.
They're assuming there will be no bad impact on Americans. And they're assuming that on November 4th, 2020, which is election day, that whoever is running against Mr. Trump will win. That's the assumption. So let's just say, nobody knows if that's true. You know, last night on 60 Minutes, Howard Schultz said he's considering running as an independent. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. But I can tell you this, for everybody who assumed that they knew what was going to happen on November 4th, 2020, and they're looking at the poll numbers and assuming they couldn't change, and that therefore whoever was running against Mr. Trump would win, That assumption is now officially dead. So the need to actually, for us to be organized and for us to win is shown to be 100% important. Because the future is uncertain. And the events will for sure happen. There will be more unforeseen events. I think what they're going to show is that this is a dangerous, reckless, and lawless man.
Yeah.
So everybody in this room's assumptions are going to be stronger. But we cannot wait. And in addition, we can't wait for Mr. Mueller.
No.
You know, I'm entirely behind the Mueller investigation.
Yeah, but we can't wait. We can't wait.
God bless Robert Mueller.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But we have more than enough information now, and once again, these legal scholars, to start impeachment today, and we need to start impeachment today.
Yes.
And we need to tell the Congress they need to start impeachment today. Right now, you know, I don't know if you guys remember, but Mr. Trump said when he was running that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and no one would care.
That's right.
And I was like, okay, that's crazy. Well, it turns out that he has shot people on Fifth Avenue, and no one's cared. The only way it seems that people take that as murder is if Robert Mueller comes out and says, well, that's murder.
Yeah.
We need to have the courage of our own convictions that when we see deceit and lawlessness and criminality in the White House, that the body which is constitutionally supposed to oversee the presidency, the Congress, has the courage of its convictions to call it out for what it is and to act.
Yes.
So, the reason that I'm doing this, and I assume the reason that you're doing this is the right thing to do.
Yes.
And it is, look, I've been working politically full-time for 6 years. And I've learned a lot over that time. And one of the things I've learned is the most important thing in politics is grassroots.
Yeah.
It's actually people,
Yeah.
feet on the street, organized, capable, enabled to be effective where they live. But that is actually what moves this country, and there's no shortcut to it. There's no shortcut to people showing up and being seen and voicing their opinions together.
Yeah.
That is something if you want government of, by, and for the people,
That's what you
that
need.
includes by.
Yes.
That
Yes.
includes human participation by Americans around the country to hold Congress accountable. Look, I made this argument that we had a huge impact in 2018.
Yeah.
Now we need to hold them accountable.
Yes. Yes.
If we made this huge difference, now we want to see you perform.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't want you to say the win was getting elected. No, that's not the win.
No.
The win is being effective.
Doing what you're
The
supposed
win
to
is
do.
producing for the people. That's the win. Holding office may look good in your obituary, but being effective is what you got elected to do.
Yes. Yes.
And there is not any time this is the crisis in America. We're going to talk about a lot of things, and they're really important. And I care about them a lot, and I'm sure everybody in this room cares a lot about them. Whether it's healthcare, or taxes, or free college, there are a lot of issues on the table in America today. But this is, and climate, absolutely. But this is the issue we need to deal with first. Because until we get rid of this guy, we're not even going to be able to, we can talk about all that stuff, but nothing can happen. And let me say this. People asked me twice in the last week, people who live in Washington, D.C., they said, are you lonely? And I said, well, you got to understand, the vast majority of Democrats agree with me.
Yeah.
So, guy who's doing my back goes, "Have I seen you?" And I go, "Need to impeach." And he goes, "Right on, I'm with you." And the guy at the scanner goes, "I signed up and my wife signed up." So am I lonely? No. The vast bulk of Democrats are absolutely behind. How could I be lonely? I said to these people, look, you live in Washington, D.C. When I'm in Washington, sometimes I am lonely.
Yeah.
But when I'm in the 50 states of the United States, I'm cool.
Yeah.
And that is true. But let me say one other thing, starting out. This is not magic.
No.
The result may be magic,
Hardly.
but the way it happens is work. You know, I am a big fan of John Wooden, who was a basketball coach. And what he said was, you practice as hard as you can, you prepare as hard as you can, you compete as hard as you can, you leave everything on the field, and you have nothing to be ashamed of. And that's what we have to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to leave everything on the field without knowing how it's going to turn out, but knowing that what we're doing is a reflection of who we are and what we believe.
Yeah.
So that is what we're here to do, is actually to make sure that we are all as effective as we can be, so that you guys understand. I know that a lot of you have organized in the past, and I also know that a lot of you haven't. And we want to make sure that everybody knows how to tell their own story and connect it to the bigger story, that everybody knows how to speak to the press, they know how to speak to members of Congress, that you can be as effective in every facet of this campaign as possible. And let me say, the rules that I've learned, I was saying, I believe in grassroots. It's funny, what I've learned in politics is the exact opposite of what I thought I'd learned in politics. Because I think what I believed growing up is that to be effective politically, you have to be manipulative. And you have to be deceitful. And that's what it is to be political, is to somehow be a successful fake. But actually what I've learned is that, I don't know whether it's changed because of the extreme ubiquity of social media and the idea that there's no privacy. But what I've learned in politics is that the only defense is the truth. That the only thing you can do is be truthful all the time.
Yes.
That you have to do what's right because everything else will fail.
Yes.
And you just have to keep on coming.
Yes.
And that is what we're going to do. We are going to tell the truth.
Yes.
We are going to be resolute.
Yes.
We are going to do what's right, and we are just going to keep on coming until we remove this man from the White House.
Yes.
This is the start, but you guys are the hope. You are the hope. You are the people who can make this happen on the ground. That's why we're so excited that you're here. Because for this to work in America, we need Americans to lead broadly. And we need you guys to be leaders in your communities and to go back and inspire your friends and people you don't know and people you do know. And to show everybody in this country and around the world that we still believe in the values of America, that we cut across every line, geographic, party, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, that Americans want to do the right thing together. And if we can do that, we will shock this country and we will shock the world.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.